Hello and welcome to 2001, A Film Podyssey. I'm your host, Kelsey, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matt.
I'm Matt.
Oh, okay. We want to cover some things real quick. First of all, what's the point of the podcast, Matt?
Well, the point of the podcast is that we watch and then we talk about every movie that came out, had a theatrical release in the United States that came out in the year 2001.
Why the heck are we doing that?
Because it was a great year for movies. It was a great year for U.S. politics.
Yeah.
It was just a magical year.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know we have some stuff we want to talk about with the website. So if you want to listen to the podcast, which I guess you're doing right now, hopefully, you can do that on our website, which is
2001pod.com. That's the numbers 2001pod.com.
Yes, you can listen to the podcast there. You can also listen to it wherever you stream podcasts. What else can you do on the website?
There's a forum. You can sign up to be a guest on this very podcast.
So if I want to be a guest and I go on the website and click the button, like, what does it tell me to do?
You put your name in, you put your email in or phone number, whichever way you want to be contacted. FYI, we don't give that info to anyone. Then you say, if any, what movies you want to do on the podcast.
Can you only pick one movie?
You can give us a list. You don't even have to put a movie. But yeah, usually you'd want to put a movie on there.
What if I don't have a movie in particular? What if I can't decide on a movie? What should I do?
If we like you, you can let us pick the movie and we might let you be a guest anyway.
Oh, cool. That's nice. Okay, what else can I do on the website?
You can also submit a song of yours or a song you have rights to that we'll play on the intro and outro of the podcast, and we'll give you credit for the song.
Oh, that's cool. So what's on the menu for tonight?
Tonight, I am cautiously optimistic for Session 9.
Why?
Well, it's filmed on location in an insane asylum in Massachusetts. The movie's kind of about the insane asylum itself and also another case. It seems like it's going to be authentically creepy.
Perfect.
And since we're in the spooky month, feeling the spooky vibes, we wanted to do a spooky movie to round out October.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both are big horror movie fans in general. We always are up for watching a scary movie. I know that we have plans to go see a movie on Christmas. What movie is that?
Nosferatu. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that. So yeah, we're horror fans. It's Halloween month, spooky month. We wanted to do something creepy. However, there's a lot of scary movies from the year. We wanted to keep those for people to sign up for.
And it sounds like we're going to be doing this for years. So we want to save some movies for next Halloween.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's true. So, Session 9, have you seen this movie, Matt?
I have no relationship whatsoever with this movie. I don't even remember seeing posters for it. Have you seen this movie at all?
No, I haven't seen the movie. I do remember seeing this DVD at my local Blockbuster when I was a kid.
Funny.
I never watched it. I think I remember seeing it playing on TV sometimes, but again, I never sat down to watch it at all. So yeah, really looking forward to it. I personally, I'm a little apprehensive because insane asylum movies just aren't my thing. I mean, I like ghosts.
Yeah.
So if that's the direction it's going in, cool. But if it's just mentally ill people are scary. If that's the premise, I'm a bit concerned.
Yeah.
I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see how it is.
Kelsey, there's nothing scarier than a lost mind.
Oh yeah, is that so? Have you lost your mind?
I don't know. Before I answer that, though, we will go ahead and watch the movie and come back with our thoughts on Session 9. Came out in 2001.
Yeah, and a fun thing too, if you guys feel like it, if you want to pop on the movie right now and then come back to the episode.
You'll want to come back to the episode.
Yeah, come back and listen to the episode.
And maybe when we talk about the movie, we'll add pauses where you would chime in. So it's like you're talking with us.
That's actually a good idea. We should be like, what do you think?
We'll give 10-second pauses and then we'll be like, oh, that's a great point. Really incredible insight.
I didn't even think about that.
And we won't talk about it any further. So
That's good.
yeah, so get ready to talk with us about Session 9 right now.
Well, soon. We still have to.
Yeah, we're going to watch the movie.
We have
and
to
we're
turn
gonna
the
play,
TV on and
we're going to play
and
some
stuff.
of the trailer here too.
Oh, yeah, you're going to hear the trailer. But then,
We're going to talk about this movie
yeah, we'll be right back
right now, or in a minute.
in a couple minutes.
In a couple minutes, actually, probably.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.
And I gotta get construction crews in here by Columbus Day, so you got a guesstimate how long?
I've got 4 really good guys. 1 week, we're gone.
That's fast.
I need the job.
So the loonies are outside in the real world, and here we are with the keys to the loony bin, boys.
Might actually want to be grateful when you're about to make some decent money.
What's the catch?
Patricia Willard scandal, 1984.
I want you to try to remember what happened 24 years ago.
Use your imagination.
These shrinks figured that with these new techniques they designed, they could release hidden memories.
You can hear me.
You okay?
I want to go home. I wouldn't tell anybody about this. If they find out about Hank, they're going to find out about the others. What are the others?
I want to come home. I am so sorry.
Hey, Kelsey,
What?
you're real, right?
I think so.
Am I real?
No.
Am I a figment of your imagination?
Also, no.
We'll have to review the tapes to be sure.
The recordings.
Yeah, this recording of the podcast.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll have to listen back.
I don't think you could recreate my voice yourself, so
Oh, yeah, maybe it's a demon.
maybe it could be a demon. Maybe one of us has a dissociative disorder.
We'll find out after the episode.
We'll have to review the tapes.
Yeah.
That was a strange one, wasn't it?
Yeah. I hate to spoil a movie because this is definitely one that's like major spoiler territory. So I do want to preface this before we really get into it with major spoilers ahead. Okay.
Major spoilers. There's twists in this movie.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to do a quick little preface that neither Kelsey nor I are experts about mental health.
Oh, yeah. No.
So, so it deals with mental illness, and I'm not an expert, nor do I think Kelsey is. So,
Hey.
okay, maybe Kelsey is.
No,
I don't know.
I'm kidding.
That being said, Session 9. Did you enjoy Session 9?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty good. Good for spooky month. Definitely had some good spooky moments for sure. The building itself was very scary. And I think we found some trivia stuff online that said that, you know, this was filmed entirely on location in an actually abandoned mental institution. And they did very little changes to the set, right?
Yeah, you looked it up. They added some meat hooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
They put a bath in the water therapy
Hydrotherapy room.
Hydrotherapy room. And there was one other thing they added.
Yeah, I think they were hanging up some like hazmat suits. So, okay. The premise of the movie is that Peter Mullen, who plays Gordon, owns an asbestos removal company, and they've been hired by the city to take out all of the asbestos from the institution. It's long been abandoned for what, 15 years?
They say 15 years, yeah.
So the institution was abandoned in 1985. It's now the year 2000, although this did come out in 2001. So Gordon owns this company he works with David Caruso playing Phil. And Phil is kind of a twerp.
Yeah, he's a twerp. He comes off like a little shady too, but
Yeah.
they're both like equal partners. It
seems that way.
Yeah, yeah.
So you find out, you know, that Gordon's kind of desperate for money. Like,
He needs this job.
Yes.
Yeah, desperately. And they're willing to sort of undercut the bid in sort of what might be a dangerous way to get
Right.
this job.
right. So when they're doing the walkthrough with the mayor, which played by Paul Guilfoyle as Bill Griggs, they're doing the walkthrough, and the mayor asks, how long is this going to take? The first quote they give, 3 weeks.
Yeah, Phil says 3 weeks minimum.
Minimum. And then Gordon comes back saying, we can do it in 2 weeks. I've got good guys working. We'll get it done in 2 weeks. Then later, he comes back to the mayor and says, I really need this job. We'll get it done in 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the promise that's made. And he gets his crew of men to go into the institution and start work on Monday.
This is Friday that they're doing the walkthrough.
Right.
And they start the job on Monday.
Yeah.
So to celebrate, Gordon Friday night goes home. He has some snacks in a bag. He also has some flowers.
Mm-hmm. And champagne.
Yeah. And he goes home to his wife and kid. The kid has been stressful for both of them.
Yeah, she's a newborn.
Yep, she's a newborn.
Or infant. I mean, she's, a baby.
She's an infant. She's had this infection for a while now. It is causing stress for both him and his wife. They aren't sleeping well. You see there's some pasta boiling on the stove in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that until Monday starts, right?
Yeah, so the team shows up bright and early Monday morning. We have Stephen Gevdon? I don't know. Playing Mike. He also was one of the writers for the movie. And Josh Lucas playing Hank. You might know Josh Lucas from movies like Sweet Home Alabama. He was in that. Some others, I can't remember. And then we have Brendan Sexton III playing Jeff, who is Gordon's nephew.
Yeah, mullet-headed, sort of younger...
Punk
sort of guy. Although sweetheart guy, it seems. I actually liked his character.
I know. He seemed like the sweetest, most innocent guy on the whole crew.
He really wanted to work hard and do a good job.
And he just wanted to listen to some hardcore music.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't let him.
Hey, quick aside. When did CSI come out?
I think the first iteration of it, Vegas, right? Is that the original one?
I can't remember.
I think so. Came out in 2000?
Oh, 2000?
I'm pretty sure.
So it was the thing when, because two of these guys, you looked it up and found...
David Caruso playing Phil is the main guy in CSI Miami, if you're familiar. And then Paul Guilfoyle playing the mayor of the town that's, taking over the institution. He is in CSI Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Not the main guy, but one of the guys. So
it's very funny. They probably never worked together on CSI, but it's funny that they're both CSI.
Oh, I'm sure they had a crossover. I'm positive they had crossover stuff.
I have not watched any CSI.
Oh, that's okay. Not necessary. But yeah, it is kind of funny that this movie was probably the first time they had really worked together.
Yeah.
Or prior to CSI. Also, Peter Mullen, we should mention, he's got a huge filmography. I mean, he was in Braveheart.
Yeah, he was in a ton of things when we looked him up that I was surprised because I kind of recognized him, but I honestly did not. I wouldn't have recognized. I don't know what he did in any of the movies that we saw.
Yeah,
pulled up. He was in one of the Harry Potter movies.
He was in Lord of the Rings, the
newest
Rings
show.
of Power on Amazon. Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff. I like him as an actor a lot.
I thought he was good as Gordon in this movie.
I thought so too.
It was kind of fun to he's Scottish too, so it was kind of funny to have him. At first, I thought he was doing the worst Massachusetts accent in the world when the movie started, because his delivery of the lines a lot of the times cut off in weird ways or roll off in a strange way that I wasn't sure if that's an accent or if it's just sort of like a character quirk. And then as he finally gets to talking, it's like, oh no, he's obviously from the UK somewhere. But for the first 10 minutes of the movie, I was like, what weird choice of accent is this actor doing? But it's just his natural Scottish accent.
Scottish. Yeah. So day one, they get started. And, it's gross. It's grimy work. They're ripping up floor tiles. They're ripping off ceiling tiles. It's dangerous. They're wearing full hazmat suits and thick masks and goggles and the whole thing.
Yeah. And it is asbestos. So
yeah, right. And so, they're going through this stuff. And they're kind of talking about the fact that this place is super creepy. And Stephen Mike kind of brings up this story. They're talking about why mental institutions were closed down in the 80s. And one reason is budget cuts. They mentioned that. But Mike brings up the fact that there were like satanic ritual.
Yeah, satanic panic was also happening in the 80s. Some of it was Reaganism, Reagan politics defunding these institutions, but specifically for this institution, there was the case of
Patricia Willard.
Patricia Willard, who in the 80s, they developed this new therapy. Was it hypnotherapy of some kind?
It was retro.
Repressed memory therapy.
Oh, what was it? It was like regressive
Memory therapy.
regressive memory something. It's basically where you are with a therapist and they're trying to have you remember something that you don't currently remember.
Yeah, you've repressed
Memory therapy.
Yeah,
in your memory. Yeah.
Right.
So Patricia Willard is doing this new therapy in the 80s, and she's remembering some fucked up shit.
Oh yeah, she's remembering like her dad raping her and her grandpa and the whole family being in a satanic cult and they murder babies and all this crazy stuff. And the parents, the family ends up suing the mental institution because, you know, they're like, none of this happened.
Well, she's going to sue the family. Like she's remembering all this crazy stuff.
Oh, so she's suing the family.
And she's suing the family, and it's looking like it's going to be an open shut case. She remembers some horrible stuff, and of course
Right.
it's the 80s satanic panic. They think it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But then during a physical, they find out that she's actually a virgin.
Which, can I just say, that's super problematic.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't just find that out with a physical examination with a doctor. Like, that's not a real thing.
Yeah, there's problems with that.
There's
for sure.
flawed logic in this movie, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. We'll get into some of the some things that I'm still confused about.
Yeah, me too. So the family countersues, and I guess this is basically the whole institution is like, well, we don't want this to happen anymore, so they shut down. I don't
or
really get
probably
it.
lost a ton of money
Yeah,
because
I'm sure.
that ended up being an open and shut case.
Yeah. So anyway,
So between being defunded and having their name dragged through the mud for this weird hypno reversion therapy thing they're doing. Regressive.
Repressive? What is that called?
Repressed memory therapy.
If I can be bothered, I'll say the name right here in editing.
You know what? I think after we finish recording, we're both going to remember it and be really frustrated.
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yeah.
So Mike, and this is something I wanted to talk a little bit about too, because this sort of starts Mike's
Journey,
his arc,
Yeah.
if he has an arc, where he's a smart guy. His dad is some big attorney general, and
he is? I didn't catch that.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I knew he was a big lawyer guy, but I didn't realize he was attorney general.
Yeah, I think he was attorney general.
Oh, damn.
General.
Okay.
So he's a well-read guy, but he's shown to be slacking off a lot.
Yeah.
And for this is something that bothered me throughout the entire movie. We see now, I understand why they wouldn't show them working asbestos removal through most of the movie. That's not really what the movie's about.
Not compelling enough for you, Matt?
Yeah. But it does show them slacking off a lot.
Actually, yeah, I noticed that. It was like the day one, the Monday, you see some work happen, and then the rest of the week it's like less and less and less work happening and more just weird.
And this is supposedly a 3-week job minimum if you
they're-
have the right tools and resources and manpower.
Yeah.
I wonder how easy their jobs are usually. Like, how much are they slacking off?
I think it's the situation of where they are. I don't think that would have happened if they were, removing asbestos from a school or something.
Yeah, true. I just find it funny, though, that they're like, oh, man, this is a 3-week job minimum. And then most of the movie is them slacking off listening to music.
Like wandering into weird tunnels.
Yeah. Because what ends up happening is Mike goes downstairs to check the breaker during a power failure of some kind. And he's looking around and he sees this box up high that says evidence.
Yeah, pretty in your face, obvious sort of.
Yeah. And he goes and grabs it and knocks a whole bunch of boxes down, opens the box up, and he finds a bunch of reels that would fit on a reel-to-reel player. And instead of coming back to work, checking the breaker. He sits down and he sets up a reel-to-reel player, which if you've set one up before, you know it's not just popping a cassette in a cassette player.
It's not?
No, you gotta wind the reel up, attach the thing, and then get it started. It's a process. Mm-hmm. And then he sits down and listens to these interviews, the sessions they're called.
In a creepy ass basement or something. Like,
yeah.
No one would be comfortable listening to these tapes alone in a dark and dank basement like this. Like,
yeah, and
no.
Mike never mentions like, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, did you hear about this Mary person I'm listening to? Like, of course, he's slacking off at work, so he's not going to bring it up.
He's our anti-capitalist hero.
Yeah.
He's quiet quitting.
He's quiet quitting, yeah. The asbestos removal job.
Yeah. He wants to go back to law school. We do know that.
Yeah. So he's like, and somehow no one notices him gone. Like no one ever catches him. He'll go down and wander to check the breakers, air quotes, and listen to these tapes for who knows how long.
Well, all the other people are having their own adventures too.
That's true. You got to everyone's slacking off somewhere, doing something different. Him listening to the tapes, the reel-to-reels, are sort of what starts the framing of the movie a little bit. Well, not a little bit, but because what we end up hearing Mary's sessions. Mm-hmm. He starts with like session 5, or we hear session 5 first.
Yeah.
And Mary has a dissociative disorder.
Dissociative identity disorder?
Dissociative identity disorder.
I think DID.
Yeah, thank you. She has DID, and she's being questioned about a traumatic event. And her different characters come through when she can't deal with the questions, you know?
So we start with Mary, and the therapist is saying, tell me what happened on Christmas in Lowell. Mm-hmm. You know what happened. And she's like, I don't remember.
And then the princess comes out as the first alter ego.
Right. So the princess comes out, and she also claims to not remember. Then we have Billy, who comes out later in the movie. He claims to see everything, so he does know what happened in Lowell, but he doesn't want to tell the therapist because he doesn't want Mary to find out what happened.
Mary's a sweet girl, and she doesn't need to hear this, I guess.
So that's sort of one storyline going on, is that Mike, for God knows what reason, is sneaking off on the job and listening to these creepy-ass tapes in the basement.
Yeah. When they're supposed to be doing this really stressful 1-week job, you know?
Another storyline is that Hank, played by Josh Lucas, wanders off, and we know that he's sort of a degenerate gambler. Like, you know, it shows him in his car opening up the glove compartment, and it's just filled with scratcher tickets.
And whenever they go to get lunch, he has to have the person bring him his scratcher ticket for lunch too.
Right. Like, and he talks about going to Vegas and going to the casino all the time. So we know that that's what is up with him. And one day he's wandering around the building, and he stumbles upon the crematorium, which creepy, you know.
He doesn't know that. He finds an old coin from 1884.
Yeah, laying in a hallway or something. And he ends up finding more coins. We learn that it's from the crematorium, and that's why they were there. He also comes across the tool, the tiny little hammer, the pick that they use to perform lobotomies. So he's like, oh, this is awesome. I bet I could sell this, you know? So he's collecting all of these coins, and he realizes, I think, this is how I took it, he realizes that he can't just walk around the rest of the day with coins jingling in his pockets, right? Because the guys that he works with are going to be like, what the hell? Are you stealing stuff from the building? Or like, what are you doing?
And he doesn't want to share it either, I'm sure.
Right.
So
instead of taking the coins right then, he stashes them and decides to come back to the mental institution at night alone. Which, can I just say, worst decision ever.
Yeah, no one in their right mind is
Would you do it?
No, I would never do that. And you know, it's not even because I'm afraid of the ghosts of the mentally ill that were mistreated in this institution from the 1800s to the 1980s.
Yeah.
It's because there's graffiti on the walls and things too. Shit-tack kids come in there with their gun. They said the kids shoot guns in the building at night. Like, no, I'm not going to go someplace by myself in the dark and have some kids shoot me in an insane asylum. So... But I guess if there's a bunch of rare old coins, maybe, or just some golden teeth, you know.
So he shows up at night and he's like not creeped out at all. He's wandering around, going back to where he stashed
He's stoked to get this stash, yeah.
So he's going back to where he stashed the coins and he hears something.
At first, yeah, he hears some rattling. He's walking. There's like this fence material where the staff go one way and the patient's supposed to be on the other side. He hears some shaking in the fence material at first, yeah.
Yeah, and he gets freaked out. He starts running. Then he calms down a bit. He thinks it was just some birds or something.
Well, he does see some birds, and I think he hits a dead end, too. So, and then he has to come back the way he was hearing the noises, yeah.
So he goes between thinking, oh, it's okay, don't panic, to being full-blown panic, like running.
Mm-hmm.
And then he turns a corner, and you see him say, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not in that moment. Maybe that's later in the movie. But you see him react. He obviously has seen a person.
Yeah, he's both surprised and he seems like he recognizes.
Yes.
At this point, Phil is looking kind of
shady,
shitty. And also Hank, we find out earlier, has not stolen, but after Phil and his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend have broken up, Hank is now with his ex-girlfriend.
Well, we don't actually know if they broke up. All we know is that Phil introduced Hank to his girlfriend, Amy. And he says at one point in the movie that that's his biggest regret. That's the biggest mistake he ever made, was introducing Amy to Hank. Because now Hank and Amy are together. So Phil and Hank are
at odds.
Yeah, they do not like each other. In fact, Phil is trying to get Hank fired from the job. He's trying to convince Gordon, their boss, that Hank is not reliable, that he's a liability, and Gordon keeps sticking up for Hank and saying, no, he's a good guy.
His stuff, he works hard, yeah.
Yeah. So then the next work day, which I don't remember if this is Tuesday or what, but the next day, Hank doesn't show up to work. And the last we've seen of him is he's down in these dark tunnels at night, and he comes across someone. We don't know who. Next day, he doesn't show up to work.
Yeah, and at lunchtime, they all get together outside. They always eat lunch outside, and they're like trying to figure out what happened. And so they get the idea we should call Amy and see where Hank is. And of course, Phil knows Amy's number, so he takes it upon himself to call Amy and see what happened. And he talks to Amy on the phone. Apparently, it's an amicable conversation. He's told that Hank ran off to gamble some money I guess he made on a scratcher. Like he fell into some money and he skipped town to do some gambling.
Yeah.
And didn't tell anyone.
So, for all we know and all the crew knows, we know that something happened to Hank, but the crew, they're led to believe that everything's fine, Hank's okay.
Yeah, that certainly tracks for his character, so.
Yeah, so they continue work as usual, but things keep getting weirder. Like, everyone seems like they're getting more and more on edge and, like, I wouldn't say creeped out. Nobody seems especially scared in this place.
Yeah, no one really minds to be in the institution during the day, at least, except for maybe Gordon, who has some episodes, maybe you'd call them, in there, and we don't know if he's like scared of them or not, but he's certainly not, he's having strange occurrences in the institution.
Yeah, and speaking of Gordon, he starts to really sort of spiral, and Phil plants the seed in our head. He says Gordon's losing it. Everyone talks about how Gordon is this calm, cool, collected guy, that he never gets stressed out, never loses it, but Phil is telling us, actually, no, like, things aren't great at home. He's got this new baby. He and his wife aren't sleeping. They're stressed out. I'm starting to see the edges are fraying a bit with Gordon. Phil is like warning everyone, but when you're watching the movie, you don't believe it. Because Phil is a twerp. Like, he's going around trying to get people fired. He's just kind of negative. He's negative Nancy the whole time. So we see Gordon starting to lose his cool. And throughout the movie, we repeatedly see this scene of him getting home the Friday that he gets the job. This is before they've even started working. We see the same scene over and over again. He's sitting in his van, holding some roses for his wife, holding a bag filled with snacks and champagne. He's looking across the street at his house, his wife, his kid. There's the pot of water and pasta boiling on the stove for dinner. Picture perfect family. And we find out that Gordon went in to have dinner, whatever, gives his wife the flowers. She says something like, "Roses? What? Oh,
What's the occasion?
What's the occasion?" Yeah. And then Gordon tells Phil in confidence that he hit his wife. And he says that he did it because she accidentally spilled a pot of boiling water on his leg.
Mm-hmm.
And that his gut reaction, his immediate reaction, was to slap her.
And we do know that is under stress. It seems like he's sort of chalking up to compounding stress, things happening. The job is stressful. They're not sleeping. And we see his leg, too, and it's messed up.
Yeah, his leg is fucked up. It's like covered in blisters.
Yeah, but obviously he knows that you never hit your wife, and he feels very bad about it. He feels super guilty about it.
Yeah, he tells Phil that it's the biggest regret of his life, and we find out that he hasn't been home since. He's been living, he says he's been living at a motel,
Mm-hmm.
but we know he's just sleeping in his van
Yeah.
at the institution. It looks like.
Yeah, there's a part earlier on in the movie, in the first like third of the movie, where he basically, I guess he falls asleep in the van at the institution. He wakes up at night in the van, and he's sort of confused and not sure how much time has passed or how he really got there.
Yeah.
He's starting to crack, and even Hank says when he's like, "Yo, Gordon, I hope you got some of Gordon's genes in you, because he's one of the calmest, coolest dudes, although I'm starting to see the cracks a little bit since he had his kid."
Yeah.
That's sort of setting up to where Phil is both like kind of slimy, manipulative and everything, but Gordon is also sort of not himself. And so at this point in the movie, we of course assume that Phil is going to turn out to be the bad guy, and maybe he's going to take advantage of Gordon in his weakened state. Like he uses the fact that Gordon hit his wife against him to try and manipulate people to get Gordon off the team, you know. And Phil seems like an all-around kind of bad guy at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I told you from the beginning, when we see Hank in the tunnels at night to get the coins and he sees a person down there, I thought that was Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know Phil and Hank have beef. We know that Hank is dating Phil's ex-girlfriend Amy. So he's got motive. And Phil's behavior throughout the movie is, manipulative. It's slimy. He's going behind people's backs and talking shit. He's trying to get people fired. He's trying to undermine his boss, Gordon. He's planting seeds of doubt in everyone's head. And yeah, I absolutely thought that Phil was the culprit.
Yeah.
I'll say, to not give everything away too early.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as the story goes on, we're gonna go over to Mike.
Yeah.
Mike is the guy who's been going down into the basement for whatever reason to listen to these creepy ass tapes about Mary and her multiple personalities. And eventually we get to her final personality, Simon. Now, one thing I thought was really interesting, when we hear the voices on the tape, or reel to reel, the voice of the princess and of Billy, the first two personalities, they sound like Mary's voice, I mean, a little bit different, but generally you can tell it's the same person.
Yeah, easily the same actress. So.
Yeah. And then suddenly we finally hear Simon after the therapist spending several sessions trying to get this to happen. We hear Simon's voice for the first time, and it is very distinctly different.
Yeah, completely different person talking here. This is on the ninth tape, the ninth session.
Session 9.
Yeah, we finally hear Simon's voice, and he is a creepy guy, Simon.
Yeah, I'll say, we've watched a lot of movies about demonic possession and stuff, like The First Omen, or what's the one we watched with the old lady that we watched? The taking the what was that?
The Taking of Deborah Logan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's another example. You know what I mean when I say demonic voice. It's like deep and creepy and like unhuman, and it doesn't sound like a person. It sounds modulated in some way, you know?
Yeah. And I like that in this movie, the reel-to-reel sort of falters a little bit to give that sort of creepy modulation effect. Yeah.
Right, so you could almost just chalk it up to like, oh, it's old tape or something.
The equipment's not, fresh.
Right.
Yeah.
But what does Simon tell us happens?
Simon tells us that Mary was playing hide and seek on Christmas with her brother. She had just gotten a new doll. Their parents went to bed, and I guess they were playing hide and seek.
In the dark.
Yeah, in the dark.
Weird.
It's a very creepy thing to do on Christmas. They're a strange family. And while they're playing hide and seek, her brother sneaks up on her and scares her really good.
Yeah, and she falls down and breaks her China doll, which she had just gotten as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And the porcelain cracks open and cuts her pretty bad.
Yeah.
And so how does she react to that?
Well, I'm not sure what Mary obviously doesn't remember this, but I think she just straight up murders her brother, right?
And her parents.
Her parents, yeah. Murders her entire family.
Why does she do that?
Well, she obviously the way I took it is that she had a psychotic episode.
Mm-hmm.
But the movie, I think, is trying to imply, is it all psychotic episode, or is there some tinge, or could it be demonic possession?
Right, because we know that Simon, in this session, admits that he told Mary to do this.
Mm-hmm.
He tells her, you should hurt your brother. And so she kills her brother. And then he says, you should hurt your parents too. And so she kills her parents too. And the therapist asks Simon, well, okay, that's another thing. So each time the therapist meets a different personality, he asks the personality, where do you live? The princess lives in Mary's mouth because she's always the one talking.
Mm-hmm.
Billy lives in Mary's eyes because he sees everything. I think of him as sort of the witness, right? Like he knows everything that's happened, but he's the protection. He's protecting all of that from Mary.
Yeah.
He's keeping it from her. The princess is sort of representative of her innocence, like being completely naive. Simon says that he lives in the weak and the wounded.
Yeah.
Not a specific body part.
Not a specific place on Mary, and not
even specifically Mary.
Exactly. So it sort of implies that Simon could be in anyone. So this was confusing near the end of the movie to me, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I kept thinking the entire movie, like, we're hearing these sessions with Mary.
Yeah.
And then we hear Simon, and it's like, oh, okay, this Simon character has something to do with what is going on in the movie that we're watching, what the movie's actually about. And I guess it kind of could be.
Yeah, because the ending is a bit open-ended. It's for the viewer to decide what's really going on.
But I don't know. That's one of the disappointments I had with the movie, is we spent a lot of time watching Mike goof off, slack off on his job to listen to these spooky tapes by himself in the basement of an abandoned insane asylum. And the payoff is not great for me. It ended up most of the time having nothing to do with the events that were taking place in the here and now of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of like a secondary storyline that doesn't really seem to match any of the main storyline until the very end of the movie. And then it kind of gives you some connection between the two, but it's tenuous at best. It's like, it's not even definitively saying, oh, this is why you've been listening to the tapes this
Exactly.
whole time.
If since it's open ended, we can interpret it to have absolutely nothing to do with
And
the
just
events.
just be creepy.
Yeah, it was creepy. That's one thing I'll give the movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was great atmosphere. They actually filmed in an old abandoned insane asylum that they used the stuff inside to dress the sets with, besides a few things like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The building was in a cool place. I love the look of the building.
Yeah, very cool building.
But man, the plot, like...
I will say, Peter Mullen playing Gordon, really good job.
I liked him a lot in this movie.
I did
yeah.
too. He really carried it for me.
I also liked Hank for some reason.
No, I did too. Josh Lucas. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's great. Just wandering the halls. Oh yeah, so what happens to Hank?
Yeah, well, we find out mullet guy,
Jeff, yeah.
Jeff, finds Hank upstairs in a stairwell with some sunglasses on, which, is indicative of something they talk about in there. And he's just standing up there, sort of in a dazed state, saying, "Oh, what are you doing here?"
What is it indicative of?
Well, it's indicative of when Mike explains exactly how a lobotomy works in great detail. And for some reason, when you get a lobotomy, they jab a pick beside your eye and scramble your brains a little bit.
Yeah. It's scientific terms.
In scientific terms. And then it gives you a black eye. So, of course, the biggest problem you have after having a lobotomy is you got this unsightly black eye you're showing off to people. So they give you sunglasses to hide the black eye. Because you would want, after a lobotomy, you don't want people looking at you being like, whoa, how'd you get that black eye?
Yeah, so Hank is wearing sunglasses, wandering the halls, seeming dazed. And it's also been days since anyone has seen him, right?
Yeah.
So everyone's like, holy shit, dude, where have you been? And
well, they've tried and find him. Like the guy, I'm going to keep forgetting his name. I'm so sorry. Jeff runs back. The things are about ready to hit a head between Gordon and Phil. And the tensions are running high. And then all of a sudden, Jeff runs in saying, "Yo, I found Hank. He's up in the stairwell." They go try and find him, but he's gone. Even though he's very slow moving in a dazed-like state, he has completely disappeared. So they split up to find him.
yeah, and this was actually for me kind of the most frantic part of the movie. It's definitely leading up into the climax of the movie because this is the first time that all of the characters have split up completely. They're all in totally different parts of the building, which is very weird. That's not happened very much at all so far.
Yeah, not at all.
And they're all frantically looking for Hank. And they have no idea where he is.
So some of them go downstairs into the spooky tunnels, and of course the generator they're using for power is about ready to run out of juice. And Jeff, who is afraid of the dark, I can't remember the phobia that's
Nyctophobia.
Jeff, who has nyctophobia, is walking through this hallway with spooky hazmat suits while the power is running out, and the power's get ready to run out. They're all looking for Jeff, and they finally find Hank in the creepiest spot possible, where he's sitting down in the dark with his shades on, just sort of
I think he's also naked.
Yeah, he's got his shirt off at least, I think. But yeah, he might be totally naked. And he's just still mumbling to himself, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And that was probably the scariest, for what is considered a horror movie. That was the scariest part for me, is just walking around the darkness of this place and the frantic nature of them searching for Hank. But then Hank is found. He's not fine, obviously. He's had a lobotomy,
very much not fine.
But he's not in danger anymore.
Well, then Jeff, who's afraid of the dark, he runs outside. He's had a horrible experience being trapped in this dark tunnel. He runs outside into the daylight, runs to the van, and gets on the walkie-talkie and tells everyone, "Hey, I'm out at the van." Next thing we know, someone, we don't know who, is running up to Jeff, and then it cuts. And we don't really know what happens, right?
Yeah.
And then I believe the next thing we see is Gordon walking around, and we've seen him several times looking in different rooms, and there are the patients of this institution would do, I guess, what they called art therapy in the movie. They would basically make big collages on their walls. And Gordon has walked into a room and there's a lot of collage on the wall, and it's all pictures of his family.
Yeah.
So creepy.
Yeah.
And like there's blood and bloody fingerprints and stuff, and it's pictures of his baby daughter. These are recent photographs too.
Yeah.
Like they just got developed kind of thing. So very weird. He's so confused. He's staring at these pictures like, what the fuck, right? Phil walks in, and Phil's also seems very confused. Like, what are these pictures doing here? And then it cuts, if I remember correctly, and suddenly Gordon is sitting in the van outside.
Yeah. This is when he has his lost time moment, I believe.
Yeah, so he's sitting outside. He like wakes up, gets on the walkie. Phil tells him to come back inside the building. He gets up and walks inside the building, and he sees Phil standing over Hank's body.
Yeah.
Hank is laying on the ground, not wearing a lot of clothes, if any.
Yeah.
And he's got sunglasses on. And Gordon is like, what did you do? Right?
Yeah, and so at this point in the movie, our suspicions have been confirmed. We thought, at least when you first brought up Phil being like, oh yeah, like when Hank is down there getting his booty downstairs by himself in the dark, and you're like, oh, I bet that's Phil. I was like, oh yeah, duh, of course it is.
Yeah.
Like you found out exactly what the movie didn't want us to know just yet. I thought, we'd figured it out, and I was wrong.
Me too.
It turns out Phil, when Gordon confronts Phil about Hank, Phil is sort of like, I don't think you do want to tell anyone about this, do you?
And he keeps telling Gordon, he's like, you need to wake up. You need to wake up, Gordon. Wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And Gordon's like, I'm awake. What are you talking about? Like, what's your problem?
Yeah. And then Gordon wakes up, and
Phil's not there.
Phil is not there. Where is Phil?
We don't know.
Yeah.
So this was one of the most confusing aspects of the movie. The fact is, like, 1 second, Gordon is talking to Phil. They're standing over Hank's body. Hank is still alive, by the way.
Yeah. I like that.
He horrifically has a pick stuck in his eye still, so presumably it's been in there for days. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's really like stuff of nightmares. But they're standing over his body. He's talking to Phil, and he turns, looks back. Phil isn't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And never was, apparently. That's the thing. Was Phil even there? We think so.
I think he has to be. We saw it theorized that Phil was never there in the entire movie. Like, he was always...
Well, I mean, even that was my question. Like, when we see Phil disappear, the first gut instinct is like, oh, Phil doesn't exist. Like, Phil is one of Gordon's multiple personalities or something.
Yeah.
Kind of Fight Club-esque.
Yeah.
Right? Phil is Gordon. But then it's like, no, there are other scenes in the movie where the other characters are interacting with and talking to Phil alone without Gordon being there.
Yeah, and there's even one where it starts out with Phil alone, and then Gordon walks up and they all talk to Gordon.
Yeah.
So either the third person that's there that isn't Phil or Gordon is also completely having some sort of episode.
Or they're going along with it.
I don't know. I feel like it cannot be that Phil was never there.
Yeah, I agree. Because also the Hank and his girlfriend thing. The Phil and Hank beef with Amy, the ex-girlfriend. Like, that, I don't understand how he would just never exist.
It's Phil that calls Amy to make up the story about how Hank went to the casino in the first place.
Right.
But that's another thing, too. So if Gordon is the one that actually killed or did the lobotomy to Hank... what's the deal with Phil then making up the story about the casino? Why would he make up a story? Phil actually wouldn't know anything at that point, right?
Well, God, I don't know. Yeah, why would he make that up? I guess because he's been trying to sabotage. He doesn't want them to find Hank because he doesn't want him to come back on the job.
Oh, I bet you he's just being an opportunist. Yeah.
Yeah,
like he's like,
just,
oh, yeah, he's gone. Whatever. I'll just make up some bad story about him. And
maybe he's just trying to manipulate the situation.
He was never going to call Amy in case Amy was like, oh, yeah, he slept in. He'll come right over.
Right.
That makes
guess that makes
more
sense.
sense, but
The ending of the movie is confusing. So we find out that Gordon, in fact, is the one that hurt Hank and everyone else, right?
Yeah.
We slowly find out that, actually, when we see Hank in the tunnel, the person that ran up to him, that was Gordon. It was Gordon that shoved the pick and gave him a lobotomy. When we see Jeff out at the van, the kid that's afraid of the dark, and someone runs up to him, we know it was Gordon. Who's his uncle?
Yeah.
Gordon is Jeff's uncle. That's like really sad.
Yeah.
So he kills his nephew. And then we also see Mike. He's walking across like a gymnasium, and Gordon runs up from behind and kills him. So he's killed everyone on this crew.
Mm-hmm.
And he's slowly starting to realize it, I think. And then he's hearing Simon's voice, right?
Yeah, yeah. And this is where I think the movie is trying to give us the open-ended implication of is the institution harboring some paranormal bad entity that is Simon that
Right,
caused Gordon to do this?
Right. Is there some sort of evil, malignant spirit, supernatural element at play that is manipulating and controlling Gordon's actions? Or is this really a story about mental illness, psychotic break? So we find out he's killed all of his crew, but the story doesn't end there. So we keep seeing the repeated scene. Friday night, Gordon just found out that he got the job. They're going to start on Monday. He's in his car. He has champagne and roses for his wife. He goes to his house. His wife says, "Roses? What's the occasion?" And then you hear the pot of water drop, and it covers his legs. You hear him screaming in pain, and then you hear some confrontation, some scuffle between the two. And then you start hearing the wife screaming and saying, "No, stop." You hear the baby crying. You hear the dog barking.
Yeah.
Then the wife stops making sounds. Then the baby and the dog stop making sounds.
Yeah.
And you slowly realize that Gordon has killed his family. He did not just slap his wife.
Yeah. Like he told maybe made up Phil.
Yeah. Maybe his own other personality, Phil. Who knows? He actually murdered his family. He's been talking about how much he misses his wife and how he just wants to go home. He wants to hold the baby. He's like confiding in Phil about this.
Yeah.
And the whole time, since before they even met on Monday to start the job, his family has just been in his house dead this whole time.
Yeah, and who knows how he spent that weekend.
Yeah.
Who knows how dark his mind has been, but then he shows up to work Monday like everything's kind of like he's tired from the baby still, right? But he still looks stressed out and everything, but he is not the same Gordon that we saw Friday during the walkthrough.
And I guess that kind of, it really does go all the way back to Friday, the first day they enter the building. They're doing the walkthrough with the mayor, and at one point, they cross through this hallway, and there's a it's a creepy hallway, and there's this chair that's sitting way off in the distance, illuminated with some light in an otherwise dark hallway. And Gordon just kind of gets fixated on it. Like he stands there and just stares at this chair, and the other men, Phil and Bill, they just keep walking through doing the walkthrough, and Gordon hears a voice that says, "Hey, Gordon," or "Hey, Gordy."
Yeah.
And we don't know at the time, in the very beginning of the movie, we don't know what that is. We just think, oh, it's creepy, maybe it's a ghost or something. But by the end of the movie, after we hear all of these tapes that are in the basement and we finally hear Simon's voice, it's Simon's voice. The one that told Mary to kill her family.
Yeah.
He says this, he has the same voice, and he's the one that says, "Hi, Gordy."
Yeah.
On Friday. And then what does Gordon do? He immediately goes home and kills his family.
Yeah. So that sort of gives us the open-ended nature of the movie.
Was there some sort of supernatural, demonic spirit inside of Mary who lived at the institution, and then that evil spirit entity continued to live at this institution until this walkthrough happened, and it sensed that Gordon was weak and wounded, and so it took him and made him do these things? Or is Simon supposed to be more of a metaphor for, you know, like you said, psychotic break, mental illness, and how that does happen to the weak and wounded more often?
I will admit, my powers of deduction, I will say, are not heightened in any way. I'm very middle of the road here. Before it was brought to my attention that it was an open-ended ending, I had no inclination that maybe there was any paranormal tomfoolery happening. And that's why when the movie ended, I did feel a little disappointed at the execution of the movie. The name of the movie has to do with the Mary storyline, and
I mean, I guess if it really is just psychological, the best thing I can come up with is that Mary's storyline is kind of a direct parallel to Gordon's, right?
Yeah.
Like, both have this triggering moment. Like, she's playing hide and seek and her brother scares her. Gordon comes home after a long day at work and gets burned by boiling water, and both of them snap like that. Like, they turn on their loved one, they murder them ruthlessly in kind of a spree. I mean, they're not just killing one person, right? And so it is this obvious parallel, but I don't understand why the voice would have to be the same in both cases. That to me is a little confusing, a weird choice, and I think that's purposefully done so that it does leave it open for supernatural stuff.
I actually like the movie a lot more now after talking about it and having the supernatural aspect brought more to my attention, because I can see now beyond my initial thoughts that sort of aspect of the movie is better done than I initially thought. I like that it's so open-ended and that we don't know, and how they execute that now in hindsight, I guess is what I'm saying. Initially, when the movie first ended and I wasn't sort of thinking about the supernatural aspect, I was like, okay, so that was pointless. There's like the tapes were pointless. It even sort of goes to show parallels, or not parallels, but when Gordon is talking on the phone, presumably to his wife, even though later on we find out she died, Mary's patient number is 444. And he goes to talk on a log right above her grave. It shows her gravestone 444, her patient number. So at that point, I'm like, okay, so she's going to have a role in this movie. And then when Simon's brought up, like, oh, okay, so Simon's going to have a role in this movie.
Yeah.
And he kind of does, but not in a direct way that I was expecting.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I was expecting the movie to hit me over the head a little harder that.
I think there's also the element of, like, maybe this is one big metaphor for the demonization of mental illness in general.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, the fact that it is open-ended, that you are left wondering, is this demonic, actually? Like, is there actually some sort of supernatural evil happening? Or is it just mental illness?
Yeah.
And the fact that the movie isn't explicitly telling you and it's asking you to make that decision, like, what do you think? Do you think he's possessed by a demon?
Yeah.
Is it this dark entity, or do you think that he's suffering from a psychotic episode, some sort of mental break?
And yeah, I can see how the movie sort of is taking that question more broadly. You can take that out of the context of the movie and just sort of ask that question broadly about mental illness.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like it's certainly back in the day, but even now still, there are sort of like the demonization of people with certain mental illnesses.
Yeah.
We treat them differently sometimes, and sometimes they can be violent. Sometimes, like, what they have going on can be safety issues and things like that. But I do think that there's a sort of stigma around it still, that maybe in 2001 they were sort of trying to get at that question a little bit. But
yeah. I mean, it has, right after the movie ended, my first thought was, Oh, so it's like a worse Fight Club.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, or Frailty. Frailty came out the same year, and it's a very similar sort of. It's a trope that we've seen. We've seen it was him the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, this person doesn't exist.
A movie that did it great, and I know it's a much later movie, but Shutter Island has a similar sort of, it's that. And it's done so well on Shutter Island.
Well, it's so funny that you bring that up, too. Like, it's this super relevant, like, current thing, because you just watched it a few months ago for the first time.
And I think it's like 2010 or something.
Yeah.
I ended up really liking Shutter. If I rate Shutter Island right now, it's getting top marks. Let's just do a podcast about Shutter Island.
Yeah, let's scrap this project and do
this
that
is going nowhere.
We could probably get hundreds of episodes on just Shutter Island.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got a lot to say about Shutter Island.
I did. So I will say, compared to all of the other movies we've done so far, all the other ones I found like really good lines to write down.
Mm-hmm.
This one, almost none.
Almost.
I have one. And actually, it wasn't a line. It was not spoken.
Okay.
It was some graffiti that I saw in the building.
Yeah.
And one thing I really like is that the graffiti was all real. It was not added by the film crew. This was just existing in this abandoned building. So, love that.
Mm-hmm.
The graffiti said, "Satan rules."
Yeah. I liked that too.
Yeah.
There was one line that was spoken that I loved, and it's a pretty basic line, but the whole execution around it delighted me. And it's when, I can't remember the character, but they go, "Fuck you."
Oh, that was Phil.
Yeah, when Phil yells, "Fuck you."
No, he says something like, "Fuck you."
Jeff, mate, go downstairs, make sure he doesn't turn around. You come with me. Hey. Fuck you.
Yeah, and
he says it weird.
He does it in a strange way, and the camera does this weird push in to it too. It's like a handheld sort of shot, and they push in while he's like flipping the bird. It was such a weird shot that I really loved the delivery and execution of that. Fuck you.
Yeah, it was weird. It was, almost fisheye feeling a little bit with how close it got to his face.
I don't know why they left that in the movie.
I don't either. Well, they had some really interesting, like, bizarre camera work in this sometimes.
Sometimes there was like, and it would just happen out of nowhere. Like the movie would look regular, and then all of a sudden they do like a weird zoom shot of some kind.
Yeah, I was thinking like maybe it was only showing that when he was going through like having a blackout where you know he wasn't remembering this moment or whatever, because we see some of that camera work when he's killing people.
Yeah.
But then it also happens in other times, so I don't really know what the purpose was, just to look cool.
Yeah, I don't know either. It makes me sort of wonder like how many revisions in the edit this thing, like did they have a lot more of those shots experiment, and then they're like, look, this is looking weird, and just a couple of them made it in. But either way, I appreciated it when they would do something like that, because it would just sort of take me out of it a little bit and jolt me a little bit. But
all right, so how are we rating this? Are we doing hazmat suits? Are we doing sessions?
Oh, sessions is good. I had the idea of maybe doing alter egos.
Oh, that's good. Alternate personalities.
Yeah, how many alternate personalities? But I like sessions too.
No, I like alternate personalities.
Okay. Well, Kelsey, on a scale from 1 to 10, alternate personalities, what would you give Session 9?
I would give it 6.66 alternate personalities.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And
you?
Also surprising. I'm surprised you gave it that number.
That high?
Yeah, that's higher than I expected from you, because I think I'm gonna give it like 5.
Well, I gave Dr. Dolittle 2 a 6.
Did you like this one better than Dr. Dolittle 2?
I mean, I like scary movies better than kids movies. So
Yeah.
would I, which one am I more likely to rewatch? This one.
I agree that I'm much more likely to. I'm never watching Dr. Dolittle 2 again, even though. But that is just surprising to me, because we were actually laughing a fair bit through Dr. Dolittle 2. It seemed like if you were to watch us from the outside, it probably looked like we enjoyed Dr. Dolittle 2 a lot more.
Oh, definitely.
But this This one I would also say if I was going to watch so far any of the movies that we've done, if I was going to watch them a second time, this would be the one that deserves it.
I think this would be a fun rewatch too, because once you know the twist ending, to go back and catch some of those things might be cool.
Yeah, I want to know exactly when Phil is murdered and not really Phil anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that was the biggest confusing part to me.
It was not done well. It was clunky.
Revealing that Phil was a manifestation of Gordon was like the biggest twist for me, only because he couldn't have been the whole time, and it's not clear when the change happened.
Right.
So.
We know that he's a real person for the majority of the movie, and we just don't know when he stopped, like when he was killed and he became entirely a hallucination.
Yeah. Not clear. So
what are you rating it?
I gave it a 5. 5 alternate personalities.
5 right down the middle, huh?
Right down the middle. I didn't love it. There's things I liked about it. I didn't love it. I thought the execution was kind of clunky sometimes.
Yeah, it was.
But the mood, the vibes, and the setting, all good, you know?
Yeah, and how many times can you say that you've watched a movie with multiple actors from CSI? Maybe just this movie. Maybe what
just
if this
one.
movie exists within the CSI universe?
That would be chef's kiss. I would love to learn the lore that allows that to happen.
Like, Phil actually isn't dead. He fakes his own death, tricks Gordon into thinking that he committed all the murders, but Phil really did. Then he moves to Miami and becomes a CSI detective.
Has a long and storied career. And you know what? The best person to solve crimes, someone who can get in the criminal mind.
That's true. That's a different show, though.
Criminal Minds. Oh.
And then the other guy, Bill, that plays the mayor, later he decides, fuck this. I don't want to be the mayor of this tiny town in Massachusetts. I'm going out to Vegas, baby. And he moves to Vegas and he becomes a CSI crime investigator.
Yeah. I'd like to think that maybe he was up for another term and just did not.
Didn't
didn't get the votes. And he's like, fuck Massachusetts. I'm out of here.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that too.
Yeah.
Do you think that Hank died?
Ooh.
It shows Gordon pull the pick out of Hank's eyeball because he uses it to kill someone else.
Yeah.
But up until that point, Hank is still alive.
Yeah, surprisingly.
And we see Hank's head like land on the pavement. It gets pulled up with the pick, and as soon as the pick comes out, his head like smacks on the pavement, and we see some blood running down his eye. But like, we don't actually know if he died because he was alive.
My theory is, yes, he died, but not immediately.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that lobotomy pick was sterilized before it was used.
Yeah, because he found it in the.
He found it like in a dank, dirty crematorium basement area with all those spider webs and junk going on.
Yeah, that's really fucked up.
So my guess is that he got a pretty nasty brain infection and died shortly after. And also, I don't think he was eating or drinking after
days.
After the lobotomy. So maybe he died of starvation or dehydration.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Wow, session 9.
Thank you so much for joining us for this amazing journey through the world of mental illness and abandoned mental institutions. This has been 2001, A Film Podyssey.
Yeah. Okay. That works.
That's just an idea for an outro. I'm happy to spit a few more.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's good.
Are we keeping that one? Oh no, come on. I didn't feel good about it.
Perfect.
No, I nailed it.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Could the government do this to us? They've kept it all in hiding. The moon is going to explode in 6 months. There's no chance of surviving. The moon, it ain't got much longer, it's gonna bust right from the core. The fragments are gonna smash into